Prime Minister Modi has blazed a trail across the United States and then Egypt with his state-level visits. These have received unprecedented coverage in the global, regional and local media, and they have been very closely followed in China and in Russia, very specifically. Now, let's take a look and evaluate what has been achieved in these visits. Let's start with the United States first. This was the third state-level visit in the Joe Biden administration. The first one was with France, the second with South Korea, and now with India. That means these are the three countries that the United States foreign policy and the president wanted to give very specific attention to, and to, I would more or less say, woo these countries in the national interests of both the sides. Now, there are three parameters under which we can analyze the results of this visit. The first would be the optics, the second would be the geopolitics, and the third and the last would be the political aspect. Now, let me cover each of these one by one. Coming to the optics part of it, I think these were unprecedented. I don't think any head of state has received such level of coverage and such adulation in the United States media, in the Indian media, in many years. We haven't seen this level of adulation and coverage that the Prime Minister got. He really scored with his Yoga Day initiative that he had taken. There were more than 140 countries. In fact, some people are putting it at 180 countries that participated in the mass yoga sessions. Yoga already is a $33 billion industry, and in the times to come, in 2 to 3 years, they are expecting the yoga business to go up to $66 billion. So this projection of soft power is not just in the soft power domain, it is also financially a lucrative proposition for all yoga practitioners and yoga teachers. India has said that we are not claiming any property rights, that this is because of our universal the universal outlook of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that things that heal the mind, that heal the body are given free. I don't think anybody should charge money for that, for royalties and property rights. So like all Indian systems of medicine, etc., it's now all becoming free, and this was a great hit. The second really optical thing was the kind of reception that he got at the White House, at which a record number of about 6,000 to 7,000, if not more, American Indians were there in such vast numbers to cheer him and to see this event for themselves. The body language between the President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi was just the best that you could look for. Not only him, the First Lady, with the kind of affection that they treated our Prime Minister, was gratifying to watch. The same continued in the reception by the Vice President. In the optical aspects of it, the best part of the visit I would rate as his speech to the US Congress, the joint houses of the Senate and the American Congress. He got thundering ovation. It was a speech which was delivered in a very folksy style, which the Americans prefer. They don't prefer ponderous, talk down your nose kind of speeches, but it was very well received, and it was a stellar performance. I mean, we were truly, it was heartwarming to see the kind of standing ovations that he received, the number of times that the speech was punctuated with applause, and some of the catchwords and slogans that he unleashed were picked up by the media. He said, "This is the age of AI. not just artificial intelligence, but America and India. I thought this was one of the best catchy slogans to emerge from this visit. And of course, he stressed the joint values that tie the two countries together, their commitment to democracy. Democracy, he said, is in our DNA, and that is what brings our people together. He highlighted the role of our diaspora, and of course, both in the joint statement and the others, which I shall cover in the geopolitical aspects, he did mention the elephant in the room, not by name, but by implication of the peace and quiet in the Indo-Pacific region, and preventing other state actors from coercing, from interfering with the freedom of navigation, with the freedom of the oceans and the skies. So everybody understood what this meant. President Joe Biden was direct and blunt, not only in the discussions, but also he had mentioned Xi Jinping as a dictator, a man who had anointed himself president for life, an authoritarian, and he refused to retract these particular statements. Now I will come to the geopolitical aspect of this visit. This is where the deliverables were. I mean, the rest is, we've had very good optics even for all his earlier visits. In fact, each visit the optics seemed to get better. But what we were looking for as strategic analysts was the deliverables. Are we willing to put our money where our mouth is? That was the, I would say, the acid test of what this visit has achieved. And one is very happy to state that the results have been almost phenomenal. There have been a great amount that has been achieved. Let me take them one by one. Firstly, I would rate the most important as the deal between the General Electric and the HAL, Hindustan Aeronautical Limiteds, for the production of F414 jet engines for the Tejas Mark II fighters, and these, don't forget, will also be powering our advanced medium combat aircraft, which is the 5th generation aircraft India is working on. They will also power the navalized version of the Tejas aircraft, which will be operating from our aircraft carriers in the future. So this was a breakthrough deal, I would say, and the icing on the cake of this visit. The simple fact is that technology-wise, India has achieved remarkable progress in terms of warship design, submarine design, aircraft carrier design, tank design, jet aircraft design, fighters design, etc. But I'm afraid we are still lagging in the aspect of engine technology. We have to largely import our ship turbines. We have to largely, except for the atomic, the nuclear powered, submarines that we have made. We have to look outwards for our ship, our engine designs, all, for whether warships, whether tanks, whether jet engines, etc. So this was a breakthrough deal which has taken the Indo-American relationship out of the buyer-seller mold and into the mold of joint production and the sharing of technologies. We are told that almost 80% technologies, 80% plus the technologies will be shared, because there are some very specific technologies for the turbine blades, etc., which are very, very vital. This is a 98 kilonewton engine, and we are also developing our own engine. The Kaveri unfortunately had failed, but we intend to develop our own engine of 110 kilonewtons. So this engine technology will certainly go a long way in helping us to make our own, manufacture our own, make in India, or to achieve autarky, what the Prime Minister calls Atma Nirbharta. Now may I add that already 77 GE 404 engines have been supplied by the General Electric for the Tejas Mark 1. They have given us 8 F414 engines for trials and for fitting with, matching with our Tejas Mark 2. And they are also, these jet engines are going to power the first 2 squadrons of our advanced medium combat aircraft. The next 6, of course, the next 5, of course, will have the Indian indigenous engine of 110 kilonewtons. Right. Now coming on to defense technology, continuing with defense technology, the next major deal is the MQ-9B, which is the Sea Guardian, the Air Guardian versions of the Predator aircraft. The Predator drone, the Predator Hail, high altitude, long endurance, unmanned aerial vehicle is world famous, because this is the Predator drone which had located Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, and it had eliminated Ayman al-Zawahiri in Afghanistan, and it had also eliminated Osman, the leader of the Iranian intelligence, the Quds force. So this is a massive, going to be a massive infusion for the Indian armed forces. It is meant for all 3. There are going to be 15 Sea Guardians for the Indian Navy, which will help it do strategic surveillance of the Indian Ocean region. And not just surveillance, these are also capable of attack. They are also capable of anti-submarine warfare, right? And then there are going to be 8 each for the Army and the Indian Air Force, the Sky Guardian versions. So with the help of these, I think the first thing is that I don't think Hafiz Saeed and Dawood Ibrahim can now sleep easily. They should not. They should not sleep easy, because with this capability in our hand, if Pakistan continues to misbehave in terms of terrorist provocations, it will get it back right, royal and proper. And I don't think any of its terrorist assets would be safe anymore with the Predator capability in Indian hands. It also enhances our strategic surveillance capability, like I said, over the Indian Ocean region, as also against the airspace over China and Pakistan, especially Ladakh and on the western borders, of course. So this is another major capability that is coming to India. There is talk of the Striker vehicles being manufactured in India and cooperation in many other fields, but the deliverables are primarily these 2. Now I come to the field of semiconductors, chips. These are the real gold in terms of their value to the technology-oriented world of today, right? So India so far was very weak. In fact, we had hardly any capability in the manufacture of chips. We had somehow missed the bus when Korea, South Korea and Taiwan had gone onto the chip bandwagon, and today they are major producers of electronic chips. This deficiency has now been addressed, and the Micron company is investing $2.7 billion in Gujarat to establish a chip manufacturing and testing plant. This will be the takeoff point for large-scale chip manufacture in India, and also for the design of chips. We have the talent. We are doing it in foreign countries, and it's about time that we started doing it for ourselves. So friendly shoring of chip manufacturing was one of the prime targets even of the American, because they want to get out of the dependence on China, which is a major vulnerability, and they want to now re-engineer the supply chains so that they are friendly shoring is done, that they are the offshoring is manufactured, which is all manufactured to China, which became the workshop of the world. manufacturing low-end technology products. Now these are getting to India, to Vietnam, to Bangladesh and other destinations. So this chip manufacturing plant that we have managed to get the American investment, technology sharing, is, I think, a great feather in the cap. Then there are the achievements in terms of the initiative for cutting edge and emerging technologies, ICET. Under this initiative, India and the United States have decided to work on joint research and development and production in terms of artificial intelligence, defense, robotics, quantum computing, 5G, 6G, telecommunications, etc. A very, very significant step. The next level of achievement, or the next major stellar achievement, is that India has signed the Artemis Accord for space exploration and space flights, under which India will be undertaking a manned flight to this International Space Station next year. As it is, we are planning our Gaganyaan to launch a man into space orbit on our own, and then we will be also jointly involved in putting a man on the moon and also perhaps taking a man to Mars. These are very ambitious space research programs, and the fact that the United States has, after denying us technology for many, many years, some of the most stringent technology denial regimes were imposed by the United States itself against ISRO. But ISRO, I think these did good to ISRO because they forced it to rely on its own resources and to innovate. So today ISRO is a major player in the space fields. We have, the PLSV heavy satellite launch vehicles. We've been launching not only our own satellites, but even satellites of many foreign countries, including Israel and the others, high-tech countries. So India is today a great space power, and the fact that this Artemis Accord has been signed is proof positive that India has arrived and that the world recognizes Indian scientific talent and ability. Let's come on to the other strategic factors as far as the geostrategic factors are concerned. There was a concern expressed in certain quarters, and China was saying that the United States is using India to weaken China and possibly also weaken Russia. So let's take this discussion up to see its merits and demerits. The simple fact is that previously we always had congruence of our democratic values. But that was never enough to have close accord and cooperation on the ground between India and the United States. On the contrary, the United States in 71 war had held Pakistan outright, had leaned towards China, and then it has been leaning towards dictatorships all through. So democratic values by themselves were not, I say, repeat not, enough to cement the relationship between India and the United States. So what has changed? What has changed is that our national interests, there is a congruence of national security interests now. So the values part is important, but in the deliverables, it is the national security interest, the congruence of national security interest, which is now cementing the India-America relationship to new heights and new levels and making it a pivotal relationship in the world for the good of the world. India is threatened by China. We have a land border, contested land border with China, and China has been unduly aggressive. At the time of COVID, when people were preoccupied with saving their people from that pandemic, China had unleashed aggression against us in Ladakh, and it had, in the Galwan clash, led to the death of Indian soldiers, the martyrdom of Indian soldiers. So it's not theoretical. I mean, China poses an actual live threat and challenge to India. It also poses a threat to the United States. It is this which is driving the two countries together. It is this which is the rationale for the establishment of the Quad, the quadrilateral of democracies, India, America, Japan, Australia. I think we need to widen this base to also include Vietnam, South Korea, and possibly at a point in time, even India will have to play the Taiwan card, the Tibet card, if China keeps aiding Pakistan to foment terrorism, to keep pressure, military pressure on India via Pakistan. We may also then have to play our Tibet and Taiwan cards. So that is the aspect of the geostrategic congruence of interest between India and the United States vis-a-vis a rising and emerging threat, and the rising threat of a emerging and increasingly aggressive China. Let us not forget that the Chinese Navy today is the largest navy in the world with 350 battleships. It has already 3 aircraft carriers afloat. One of them is still under trials. Its initial plans were to make 5. The new plans are to make 10 aircraft carriers. It has over 60 submarines with a large, almost 20 of them are nuclear submarines. China is increasing its nuclear stockpile from the present 450 to 1,500. It is a serious challenge to American security, Japanese security, Asian security, global security. And this is what I thought was the real cementing factor and the real factor that was inducing delivery. You know, democracies can deliver. Well, they can deliver if they are forced to come together by a common threat. And the common threat in this case is China. How about Russia? India has always prided itself on its strategic autonomy and its independence of decision making. Indians have been very forthright and very clear that they would not like to become junior partners in any alliance relationship. They would not like to subordinate their decision making capability to the interests of any other nation or conglomerate or grouping of nations. And this has been most evident in our stance towards Russia in the Russia-Ukraine war. Despite all American Western pressure to stop buying oil from Russia, India, 50% of Indian oil today is coming from Russia. And India is refining this oil and selling it back to Europe. It is one of the major contributory factors for the price of oil at the global level not shooting beyond the $200 per barrel mark. Today, people are quietly thanking India. But at one stage, there were a lot of, people were hot under the collar that India is not, signing up on the side of Ukraine, signing up on the wishes of the United States of America. We have maintained our strategic autonomy, our autarky, and our independence of decision making. This has been made clear to United States, and the United States has gone ahead with this deepening of relationships despite this factor, because they have come to respect the the correct stance of the Indian government of the Republic of India. What I would like to point out as far as the Russians are concerned is that there is a fear in many quarters in India that the Russian delivery of weapon systems will now suffer because the Russians are so heavily, deeply committed in their own fighting their own war in Ukraine. They may not have weapons and spare parts to deliver to India. One of the things that is often cited is that out of the 5 batteries of S-400 anti-aircraft missile system that is touted to be the world's best anti-aircraft air defense missile system, we have received only 3. The 2 which were to come are still not coming, but the Russians are saying no, they will stick to their promises and they will deliver. So that is one aspect which is now there is a shadow of doubt on this arms relationship. In any case, we have to cut the level of arms dependency that we have had on the Russians, which is up to 70%. 70%. This government has tried to bring it down to 60%. We have to head towards autarky. We have to manufacture our own weapon systems, not only manufacture them for ourselves, but also for export to defray the costs. Now, the other factor in this India-Russia equation is that Russia also does not want to be a junior partner to China. The fears being expressed in some quarters in India was that, look, Russia and China are now ganging up together against the United States. So we need the United States to fight China or to stave off the Chinese threat, and therefore we must now de-link from the Russians. I don't think that would be entirely very wise. We'll have to maintain the Russian relationship is a tried and tested strategic and defense relationship. There should be no hurry to switch sides, because of the simple fact is that the Russians need India. They do not want to become junior partners to China, just as India does not want to become a junior alliance partner to the United States and subordinates its interest, national interest, to the interest of any other state, nor does Russia. Russia realizes that economically it is much, much, much weaker than China. And the only peer group competitor of the United States in geo-economic terms is China, not Russia, really. And to that extent, we were surprised at the Biden administration's total focus onto the European theatre and their deep involvement. But that has been at the expense of attention to their primary threat, which is China. But now they seem to be making amends, and it is this which is leading to an India-America congruence. So with this survey of the geostrategic aspects, let me go on to the last aspect of politics. Now, both India and America will be going in for national elections and presidential elections. So this is an election year, more or less a penultimate election year. Number one, 75 US congressmen had petitioned President Joe Biden to read out the Riot Act to Prime Minister Modi on the aspect of the dilution, so-called dilution of democratic freedoms in terms of freedom of the press, freedom of religion and human rights, etc., etc., the standard propaganda stick to beat India with. So they had actually petitioned. If you study a large amount of these American senators and congressmen have large Muslim populations in their electorate, and this possibly explains their anti-India stance and behavior. But they were definitely a force to reckon with, because they had advised Biden quite openly. And then there was the surprising intervention by former President Obama, when he also sort of took India to task on these aspects. Therefore, there was a fear that if America tries to publicly hector India on these domestic issues, it would not be taken too kindly by the Indian side, and they would retort and retaliate. After all, America also has its shortcomings as a democratic nation, its treatment of its own black population, etc. I mean, they are making amends, but the simple fact is that we all have our weaknesses. We are all not perfect democracies. So if rather than letting it degrade itself to a level of trading charges and accusations of my democracy is better than your democracy, or you are worse off than I am, which would have been quite counterproductive. I'm very happy to note that President Joe Biden, I don't know whatever he may have said in private to Prime Minister Modi, there was nothing in the public domain on this particular aspect. One way that it was slipped in was that in the joint press conference, there was we almost felt it was a planted question about precisely these troublesome issues, in India. But if you investigate a bit, the journalist who asked it was of Pakistani origin, and an MS Siddiqui. She is Pakistani born, settled in the United States, and she raised this issue, and she started with a very derogatory line, India is said to be a democracy. But I was very delighted with the Prime Minister's response, in which he right royally snubbed her, and he said, democracy is in our DNA, there is no question of any dilution of our democratic freedoms. We stand true to our constitution, that is our basic Bible. And I thought his reply was very apt and very telling. So this is the final aspect. We have analyzed the visit of Prime Minister Modi to the United States under the aspect of optics, under the aspect of geopolitics, and also the final aspect of politics. And I would say it has been a resounding success.